are these people?
Ryan Knight is with us tonight. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, thank you so much, Tara, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So we were talking before the mics went hot and the cameras were on about the nightmare of 2020 and those of us that think outside the box and aren't really into the duopoly. And as you know, tonight's show is called The Politics of the Duopoly. And you've been one of the biggest critics of how the two-party system is failing American citizens. And you were so outspoken during that time. And as a result, got trolled heavily and, called all kinds of things. But tell me a little bit about what good came from that and kind of because you did galvanize a lot of people and get them kind of forward thinking and, exiting the Democratic Party for
Yeah.
that.
So, I mean, I was a Democrat for like 18 years. And, I like to say now an obedient Democrat. I voted for Bernie in 2016. He was kind of like the first politician that kind of opened my eyes a little wider to just how corrupt the system is. But then after the primary, like a good little Democrat, I voted for the party nominee, Hillary, which I now regret.
Right.
But in 2020, I couldn't, after the primary, again, I voted for Bernie again. After that primary, my eyes were wide open, and I'm so over the term woke because the people who use it really aren't. I like the term awake. And when I finally saw just how corrupt the Democrats really are and that their function in our duopoly is essentially to trap all social opposition to our corrupt political system and to our economic system and to trap it into their party where they can control it, water it down, and then destroy it. Literally, there's no other institution in American society that destroys grassroots movements with more efficiency than the Democratic Party. They destroyed Bernie's movement in 2016. They destroyed it again in 2020. The party will destroy any grassroots movement or any movement toward dignity and justice for all people, because again, that's the role of the party. The party is, when I hear people call it a left party, I laugh because when I think of left, I think of the working class, I think of healthcare for everyone. I think of jobs for everyone. I think of an economy that works for everyone. Well, that's not what the Democrats are on board for. The Democrats literally exist to serve Wall Street, the ruling class, and the military industrial complex. And now where they confuse people and where they got me for a while is they sedate the public with these sugary platitudes and, they weaponize identity politics. And they say, I happen to be gay myself, and they pander to the LGBTQ community like none other. But the truth is, like, they really don't care about us. They don't care about our lives. What they care about is power. What they care about are their wealthy donors. And look, leaving the party after the 2020 primary, I knew how corrupt the party was. I knew we were never going to get fundamental change for the people from the party. But even I underestimated just how corrupt and disastrous Joe Biden's presidency has been. Let's just be honest about it, right? I mean, the gas prices are out of control. Inflation is out of control. More money for the military, more endless wars. We're now in a proxy war with Russia. They just gave them another $40 billion this week. And meanwhile, we've got no health care, no Medicare for all, no living wages. No one's life has gotten better with the Democrats in charge of the White House and the House and the Senate. And that's because the party is corrupt and it literally exists to serve the rich and to serve the ruling class, just the same reason the Republican Party exists. So when you finally realize that both of these parties are working against the people's interests, then you start to realize, okay, now we've got to build movements and actions to get the people to come together. Because at the end of the day, the people aren't as divided as the politicians and the cable news networks would like us to believe, right? We want good jobs. We want to make a living wage. We want healthcare. We want to keep our families safe. We want good roads and bridges and schools. And we don't want to be at war with all these other countries and bombing the world, right? So we agree on most things, but it's the parties who keep us divided. because that's how they rig the system against us. If you can, it's divide and conquer, the old strategy, and they do it really well. And I can't be a part of it anymore. I've forever left the Democratic Party. Like you said, #DemExit. And I'm all about now working with people who've maybe voted Republican or Democrat in the past that want to build, a political party, a movement that's actually going to deliver dignity and justice for all people, and not just, fearmonger and fundraise and protect the powerful. And that's all we see both of these corrupt parties do, is they
Well,
literally
and I
use
think
our government
everyone saw
to protect the
a
powerful.
really shining example of that with the Roe v. Wade that just happened, because Democrats got a little boost in their fundraising. And what was
Right.
interesting about that was the timing, one, but two, also that anyone would even, I don't know who would give to them. Like, why would you give to the Democrats? Like, when, they are notoriously not going to do what you need them to do.
Yeah, and we saw this week. What did they do? Or just yesterday, excuse me. They just voted to. They're not going to abolish the filibuster to actually pass and protect abortion rights in this country. Hey, Kitty. But they did vote yesterday
next to me, so
with
sorry.
Republicans unanimously. Every Democrat in the Senate, including Bernie Sanders, they voted to give more protection and security to the Supreme Court justices. But they won't protect women's rights. But they moved so quickly to protect, again, the Supreme Court justices, which are members of the ruling class. So when you see this government, this duopoly, people call it a two-party system. It's really a one-party system because they work together. This whole, when you turn on Fox News or CNN and you see, it's like professional wrestling. It's all a charade. You know what I mean? Like, behind closed doors, when the Democrats and Republicans aren't in front of the camera and pandering to their respective bases, behind closed doors, they're best friends. Because they share the same corporate donors. They work for the same billionaires. And so when you finally see the charade for what it is, and you see that, like, watch how fast our government moves to action when it's things like protecting the ruling class, giving more security to the Supreme Court, when it's bailing out Wall Street. Or how about last week, they just voted to give large corporations $140 billion tax incentive, where they're calling it for research and development. Well, Bernie just said, well, why don't you actually just have a little amendment to the bill? And instead of just giving these corporations this huge amount of corporate welfare, why don't we make sure they don't outsource those jobs to China or Mexico? And why don't we demand that the jobs these companies create, that they'll stay in America, which is very reasonable. Nope, every Democrat and Republican voted against Bernie's little proposal. And so but they didn't vote against the $140 billion in federal aid to these large corporations. So you see a government right now that is the most corrupt government in the world, that wants to continue to fund wars throughout the world to suppress the working class abroad. And then at home, with high taxes, people aren't getting anything for their taxes. And any kind of legislation, bipartisanship in Washington, D.C., when you hear that word, be scared, because that just means that the Democrats and Republicans have come together to write legislation and write laws that are rigged for the billionaire class and for the giant corporations who own them. And so that's what happens in Washington. And if we want a government, if we want a country where dignity and justice is possible for everyone, then you can't vote for either one of these parties. You definitely can't support them financially. Like, stop giving your money to politicians. Invest that money. If you have money to give it to your community. Mutual aid. Give it to people who are actually struggling in the streets. Don't waste $1 on these corrupt politicians. Because again,
or support your podcast or mine.
Yeah, support independent media. Because information warfare. How do you get? If you just heard me talk about what our government is, how do you get the public to support an oligarchy, right? To support a government that is literally rigged against them? Well, the only way you do that is by controlling the information, and by, agencies like the CIA, and also our corporate media, which is literally just a propaganda machine for the US empire. That's how you get people. And that's why you see this push for censorship, because people are starting to wake up. Their lives aren't getting any better. And so no one would support this government if they knew what was really happening. So that's why they're censoring information. That's why they're trying to control information. So the people won't wake up. And so the people will keep obeying this corrupt system. And, I just think it's time for millions of us to rise up and say enough.